Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to WASA Distance Education and ENG4C. Presently, we've been working on the culminating task for this course. That's unit number 4. And we previously have discussed how to create your portfolio. Now, the example site that we used is, Google Sites to demonstrate how to create a portfolio there, but there are other ways to do it as well. And then the second part of the culminating activity then is the report that you have to write. And that report, of course, has 4 main areas in it, other than the summary. So we'll have the summary, 4 main areas, 4 main strands, and then the conclusion. Those will be the subtopics. So in yesterday's class, we had a look at activity 2, the knowledge section. The success criteria for that was you will identify what you know and what you didn't know before reviewing your portfolio selections. You'll select, generate, and organize content for this knowledge section of your report by using the portfolio report template as a tool. And also you will develop your ideas fully using that point-proof comment structure that we talked about yesterday. And you'll develop clear and convincing or relevant proof of your subject-specific knowledge by referring to evidence drawn from at least 3 portfolio selections. And so those 3 portfolio selections can be anything from the knowledge base that we worked through in this course. On page 11, at the bottom of page 11, the section of the report focuses on the knowledge and content of the course. Discuss what you know that you didn't know before. In this selection, you must make specific reference to at least 3 of the 4 items in your portfolio using the subheadings that appear below and persuade the audience that you understand the following. Okay, so you have 3 of the 4 items in your portfolio that are knowledge-based, and then you need to take content out of those to demonstrate that you have knowledge in conducting research, the stages of research, how to determine whether a website is reliable, strategies for citing sources properly, how to do an advanced internet search. Also on the theories of fear, we're on page 12 now. Freud's theory of the unconscious mind and why we respond to horror fiction. Stephen King's theory about why people like scary movies. The third essay that we looked at, the physiology of fear. And then the 3 subgenres of horror. And then the last section here is the elements of fiction. Narrative voice. What is the difference between a reliable and unreliable narrator? How does that affect the way that you read a text? The characters. What's the difference between a round and flat character? Provide examples from your novel of one of the short stories you read in this course. And then finally there's realism versus fiction. How does the author create a sense of realism in fiction? Is this important or even necessary in fiction? Provide examples from your literature circle novel, that's the novel that you read, or one of the short stories that you read in this course. Okay, so at the bottom of page 12, I highlighted an important section, the point proof comment section. This is how you can ensure that you fully explain your ideas if you follow this model. And then we had a look at the categories, the knowledge categories in this assessment rubric on, well, it starts on page 13 and spills on to page 14. Only this last little block of assessment criteria has to do with the knowledge group of expectations for the course, right? So all of these right here, knowledge and understanding. Next we will be having a look at thinking, and that is our next activity on page 15. In this activity, you will draft the second section of the report where you will identify the thinking skills you learned in this course that were most helpful for you before, during, and after listening, speaking, reading, and writing activities. First, read about and reflect on the different levels of thinking. Well, we'll look at that in a second. Next, draft the thinking section of the report referring to specific activities you completed throughout the course and demonstrate your growth as a learner. So the learning goals for this activity are, by the end of the activity, you will be able to reflect on the thinking skills you learned during this course. You will be able to draft the thinking section of your portfolio report. Success criteria following that, bottom of page 15. I know I'm successful when I can identify the ways in which I use a variety of thinking skills before, after, and during listening, speaking, reading, and writing activities by reviewing my portfolio selections. Explain which strategies were most helpful to me. That's a form of metacognition, correct? Select, organize, and generate content for the subject of my report by using the portfolio report template as a tool. Develop my ideas fully using a structured point proof comment. Once again, we highlighted that, discussed it in depth yesterday. And then finally, I know I am successful when I can develop clear and convincing or relevant proof of my thinking skills by referring to evidence drawn from at least 3 portfolio selections. Let's have a look at the content section then of this activity. Farther down on the page here of page 16. So once you receive feedback from your teacher in the knowledge section of your report, it's time to draft the thinking section. In this section, you will reflect on the different strategies and processes you use throughout the course and show how you've used these strategies and processes to meet the expectations of this course. Okay, here we are back to that word again, metacognition. Meta simply means something that refers to itself. And cognition means thinking. Therefore, metacognition means thinking about thinking. That's what you're required to do in this section of the report. Well, I mean, we've been doing metacognition, engaging in that throughout this course. Anytime we reflect on our learning, it's all metacognition. So, metacognition means using learning goals, success criteria, and descriptive feedback. So that descriptive feedback, of course, comes from your teacher or even some of the peer assessments that we did in the course, right? That's descriptive feedback. We are describing something that needs to be done or some type of writing that looks really good, exceptional. Highlight that. It also means recognizing how attitudes and habits influence learning. And this is something that's not really ever covered so much in a lot in courses, curriculum courses. Attitudes are really important. They help overcome all kinds of roadblocks, stresses, and it's having a good mind, a good way of thinking of things that helps us get over hurdles. And habits, of course. Habits are, a lot of habits are easy to change, right? So you realize that even your sleeping habits have an influence on your learning. If you stay up too late at night, watch all the late movies, and I was going to say Johnny Carson, but he's long gone. But any of these late night talk show hosts, right? You're tired, be tired, and you got a class at 8 o'clock in the morning. Well, that's the habit that you've allowed yourself to get into. That's a destructive habit because you're not going to be clear of mind when you go to that 8 o'clock in the morning class. Also, metacognition means identifying, communicating, and acting on learning preferences and strengths, assessing learning situations, and developing plans of action. So I have an essay coming up. I have 2 exams. How I prepare for, studying for those exams and also working on the essay, how I plan my time out is very important. Reflecting on your learning and engaging in conversations about your thinking and seeking clarification and support when barriers to learning are encountered. So, when you graduate and move on to college or university, it's really important that you seek out that support and clarification from the teachers and professors, and don't become victims of your own inactivity. Generally, I always thought that the more a student engages with the professors and teachers at college or universities, the more likely they are to be successful. So, let's take a look at these different kinds of thinking. That's on page 17. Let's read through this text here and see if we can get to the bottom of what this actually means. This little pyramid here. At the peak here we have creating, evaluating, analyzing, applying, understanding, and right at the bottom, remembering. Different kinds of thinking are required for different tasks, which is illustrated by the image we just looked at. At the bottom of the triangle is remembering. Being able to remember facts and details is an important skill. It forms the base of all the other thinking skills, but it is also the least complex of all the skills. Least complex, simply, what do we mean by that? Well, basically, to remember things, well, we do have strategies. We didn't cover them in the course that if you have to study for an exam, you have to sometimes memorize events, times, dates, definitions. But no matter what academic area you're going into, it's a whole different paradigm, a whole different language of terms and definitions that procedures, criteria that you have to learn. And so it doesn't just work to read about it. Maybe with some people, a very small portion of the population can just read about something and they will remember it and be able to apply it. But most people have to do something else here. They have to, we use rote, and that is just memorizing things. And you'll get a lot of that, even in things like psychology, when you go to university, probably social work as well, or any academic area, and probably a lot of the technical-based courses that you might get in college too. If you're going to become a mechanic, you have to understand all of the different mechanical procedures and definitions. Okay, so let's read more of what this has to say. Understanding is a little more complex than remembering. You can remember something without really understanding. For example, if you're learning what the term theme means, when it comes to studying literature, you may memorize the definition, but you may not really understand what the word means if the teacher asks you to identify the theme in a story. Once you do understand the word, then you can apply your understanding by identifying the theme of the story. When you analyze something, you're looking at a thing in terms of its different parts, so you can determine its essential features or criteria. If you were asked to analyze a short story, you would begin by separating it into different components such as character, plot, theme, word choice, and symbolism. Of course, you would need to understand what is meant by character, plot, theme, word choice, and symbolism first. Can you see how one skill builds on another? At the top of the triangle, you'll find the most complex skills: evaluating and then creating. When you evaluate, you are forming judgments about something. Is the short story effective or not? You have to be able to analyze it first. Then the final, most complex thinking skill is creating, where you need all the other skills to produce something new, like your own short story. And so we went through, so for instance, the elements of a short story. And we analyzed short stories. and we made judgments about them. And then, well, we didn't actually write a whole short story in this course, but what we did was retell a short story, which is, we still have to know all those basic skills, be familiar with them, but then we recreate that short story. It's almost like writing a short story over again. But we don't have to go to that whole extent. I'm glad that the last couple of ENG3C and ENG4C courses, the students had to write a whole short story. And I found that was pretty laborious, and it scared away a lot of students. So in the retell, you can achieve a lot of the same skills without having to go that intensely into writing a complete short story, because that can take a long time, can't it? Think about the different skills you've used throughout this course. Which tasks require you to demonstrate lower order thinking skills like remembering and understanding? Go back to the test that we did, the short little multiple choice. Take a few moments to jot down your reflections before moving on. Now have a look at what you will be expected to discuss in this section of the report. And that is Section C. So we did, Section A will be the summary, of course. Section B was knowledge, and now Section C. This section the report focuses on the strategies that you've used throughout this course and how they've helped you with your reading, writing, speaking, or listening skills. In this section, you must make specific reference to at least 3 of the 4 items in your portfolio. Explain to the audience what the following strategies are and how you use them in this course. And these are the areas of concern, the areas that you're going to write about. They begin on page 18. Reading strategies. Choose at least 3 of the following that were the most helpful for you, and explain and identify how you use them during an activity in this course. That's reading strategies, activating prior knowledge, using a graphic organizer such as a KWL chart or I read, I think, therefore chart. Skimming. Making connections. Visualizing. Talking back to the text. Or asking questions, that is asking questions about what you're reading. So, you make notes on, I wonder why this turned out to be like this. What listening strategies do we have? Choose at least 3 of the following that were most helpful for you. Explain and identify you use them during an activity in this course. Set a purpose for listening. Avoid distractions. Listening for main ideas and supporting details. Once again, asking questions, visualizing, taking notes, and making a judgment. And these all refer directly to the different activities and key questions that we have done previously. Well, listening strategies was mostly found in the first unit. I can't remember exactly the key question. I think it was like key questions 5 and 6. So right at the beginning of the course, remember we listened to um, videos by, well, I played on air Martin Luther King, right? We analyzed those videos, or the video on air of his I had a dream speech. And then speaking skills, choose at least 3 of the following to explain and identify how you use them during an activity in this course. Okay, so the one activity that we did engage in speaking skills directly ourselves, of course, was the key question 8 in our narrative, our oral narrative essay. But we also had a look at uh, Martin Luther King and other speakers, how to make eye contact, use visuals when appropriate, avoid unnecessary words, speak clearly, vary your pace and tone, and practice. And then writing strategies. Write about all 4 of the following. Brainstorming, using the stages of the research process. How does revising and proofreading your writing improve the clarity of your ideas in writing? And using templates and examples of models for your own writing. Okay, so hopefully that's clear how to do that. If you want to discuss that further, then give me a call or contact me through email or Facebook, and we can talk about the items in your portfolio and how to choose the best one so that it can represent all of these different subcategories just so you can cover everything. And once again, remember to use the point proof comment strategy or practice as you write this section of the report. If you follow that structure, it's like a template, right? If you follow that, then you should do really well in completing the report. It's just like filling in all the gaps. Are there any questions that you have or instructions that you don't understand? If so, now is the time to discuss any questions or concerns that you have with your teacher. And drafting the thinking section of the report. That's what we're after right now. Complete the draft of the thinking section of your report and submit it to your teacher for feedback and suggestions. Once again, refer to the portfolio template for formatting and content. The rubric below will be used to evaluate your final version of the portfolio report, but it is helpful to look at the rubric now so that you know the expectations you are working toward. The specific expectations of the rubric that you are addressing or that are addressed by the thinking section of the report have been highlighted in red for you. Okay, and oh, they're not actually highlighted in red here, but I can do that right now. Okay, that is these sections right here. There, it is highlighted in red. These are the thinking criteria. So in thinking, we mean to use metacognitive skills related to listening and speaking by naming specific listening and speaking strategies, explaining which were most helpful in certain situations, and describing strengths and weaknesses with those skills. All right, so we have the different levels of categories here. Level 4 is probably what most people want to achieve. And so we use metacognitive skills related to listening and speaking with a high degree of effectiveness. Next, we use metacognitive skills related to reading by naming specific reading strategies, explaining which were most helpful in certain situations, and describing strengths and weaknesses with these skills. Okay, so the first one was listening and speaking, and then we have reading strategies, and then the third one here is use metacognitive skills related to writing by naming specific writing strategies, explaining which were most helpful in certain situations, and describing strengths and weaknesses with these skills. So right now I'm just going to go right back to the actual formatting, these different points that you need to cover, right? And so they're all broken down like that, right? We have reading strategies right at the top of page 18 here. And so these are the things that you need to cover. Right? So basically, if you cover all of them and you also use the point proof comment format for each one, and the proof usually refers to something that you did in one of the key questions, right? So there they are, right there. That's your reading strategies, your listening strategies. These all refer directly to the rubric. There they are right there, the speaking skills right here. Oh, and there's the writing strategies right here. Okay, so we've covered knowledge and thinking. We have two more, of course, communication and application. We will finish those up next week. As we do a couple of makeup classes. Next week it's not a regular scheduled class. We have it's the admin week. And actually, technically, this is the last day of our regular classes. 9-week course is coming to an end. Let's see now. Once again, I want to go back to our template. Just to familiarize you with how it's going to be structured. All right, so of course, it's got to have a title page, just like our research report did. That's generally the first page. No, it's always the first page, and then the summary, right? So right now, um, we won't be putting anything in to start off with in the summary, but now we can include information on the knowledge and thinking sections, and so we can introduce those into the summary. These are the 4 areas we're going to discuss: knowledge, thinking, communication, and application. Right, so you'll bring that, introduce that. Probably that'll be your topic sentence of that paragraph. And then you'll briefly explain the 4 different sections. And that will be the actual summary. And as we scroll down, of course, we have the knowledge section, which we looked at and discussed yesterday and today. All the different points that you covered. And then the thinking section as well, right here. Have it on the screen. That's what we covered for today. And then the communication section starts on page 47, right? And that's what we'll look at on Monday, along with application. And those are all the sections of the report. And let's break it down like that. Now, let's take a look at some of the different possible activities that you are going to refer to. Okay, so I'm going to open up unit number 3. Oh, I guess I'll have to go in here to do that. There we go. And I'll just quickly go through number 3 here and highlight the actual activities and key questions that you are going to select from, right? Okay, so I'm picking unit 3 because it is the longest of them all. And so our first, okay. Bear with me here. Okay, so in the section here on activity 2, the business letter, right? Let's see. I'm scrolling down here. We looked at all these different types of letters: inquiry letters, letters of complaint, letters of introduction, and then we actually constructed assessment criteria in key question 24, but it was the key question 25, right, the business letter, where you have to write the business letter addressing different institutions or characters from the novel that you read. But all of these have been highlighted. Okay, so for writing, we have for key question 25, please keep a copy of this assignment in your portfolio folder. You will be referring to it in your culminating task under writing. So remember, there's several different assignments that we can refer to in the writing category. Let's see, we'll go back to that again. It's right at the beginning of unit number 4. Let's go back right to the beginning here. Yes. Okay, so for writing, we are going to pick one of these items. There you go. Writing. Okay. Retelling of a short. There's lots in writing here, right? I'm on page 8. Right, so for each of the following areas, oral communication, reading, writing, and media, you must choose one assignment that you can refer to in your report when demonstrating your growth throughout this course. Right, so I'll go down to the writing section. Let's say I pick the business letter, right? The one that we just looked at, Unit 3, Activity 2, right? Okay. So let's say we chose that for writing. And for reading, let's say any of the novel analysis posts. So we can choose one or any of them from Unit 3, or maybe the KWL graphic organizer, right? We can use that, put that in our, identify that in our portfolio that we are going to use later to demonstrate our the skills that we have learned in reading, or how it helps us with increasing our reading skills. And then we have oral communication and the activities associated with that, right? So you'll be picking one of those, identifying speaking strategies, using listening skills to identify the main idea and supporting details of someone speaking. That all took place in Unit 1, Activity 3. And then, of course, we have media. So, in media, we have the comic strip, the film analysis organizer, and the film analysis from Unit 2, Activity 5. So you select one for each of these, and they will help you, or you can use them to demonstrate your learning. That's the whole idea. All right, so I think that pretty well covers it for today. So this is a very important unit. It's worth in itself 30% of your final mark, right? So you will build your portfolio. Your portfolio will have 4 items in it that demonstrate your skills. And then the second part of that culminating activity, of course, is the actual report, where you will go into some depth describing how those skills manifested from the point proof comment structure that we went through today and or reviewed today and but discussed yesterday. Okay, so I hope the whole structure of it is starting to form. Think about it in your head how these parts all relate to each other. Okay, so this is this is an important skill to put together all these parts and how they relate to each other. It helps us see the big picture of the thing, right? Anyways, yeah, so that's pretty well all I have to cover for today then. As I said, we'll finish up next week. I don't have the exact date that we'll be finishing up, but the videos will be saved in our YouTube class list and will be made available to anybody who wants to have a look at them. They're great supplemental material. There are things in the videos that I cover that aren't available in the unit itself. Okay, well, everyone, have a great weekend. And as I said, the next classes will be available. This is the end of ENG4C. Next semester, I will be teaching ENG3E, which is a grade 11 workplace English. And but I'll still be marking this course. If you, anytime that you get work done, send it in. We have to the end of the school year to complete all the requirements of the course. But don't wait. Send it in. Send your work in, and there are quite a few key questions, right? There's 46 of them. So just keep nipping away at them, and before you know it, you'll have what you need to get a credit for this course. Have a great weekend, everyone, and good luck with completing, and we'll talk to you again some other day. Bye for now.